Hi, my name is Mick Molina. I study oboe at the University of Houston, and today I'm going to show you how I tie a reed. Alright, so the very first step is to have some cane and to make sure you soak it in some water. It's best if it's tepid, kind of lukewarm. Cold water isn't so great for cane. For this video, I'm going to assume that the cane is already shaped because the process of shaping cane could be a whole other video in itself. But here's my cane. I've had it soaking for a while. Alright, and the materials we're going to need are, of course, the cane, a mandrel, a ruler. I use one that has the metric system on it. Just something to cut some thread. I have my knife handy here. You'll need staples and some thread. Alright, so before I get going with the cane, I always tie my thread first. And if you have a table leg or something, you can just tie the thread right around that. I don't here in my dorm, so I use a C-clamp and tie it onto the C-clamp, and that works just as well. And I'll show you how I do this. So first, I grab my spool in my right hand, the thread in my left hand, and then you just make a series of half hitches if you know your knots. It's just like a loop. And it really doesn't matter what kind of knot you use, as long as it stays tight. That's the main purpose. So I do a few of these and pull it tight, and I'm ready to go, okay? So I leave that sitting, and then I grab my staple and put it on the mandrel. A note about this, it's always good to make sure that the staple fits the mandrel so that the end of the mandrel isn't sticking out of the staple, or the staple is too long for the mandrel, because that can cause problems when you start wrapping the reed. If you can see, mine is flush at the top here, which is good. That's what you'd like. So I grab my mandrel in my left hand, and I just start to position the cane on it, and just kind of grab it with my fingers at the top, like that. Alright, this is the tough part here, for me at least. What you want to do is get your ruler out and measure from the bottom of the staple here, from the bottom of the cork to the very top of the cane. And it should be at 72.5 millimeters, plus or minus. The longer you can tie a reed and get it to seal, the more leeway you have at the top to, if you make a mistake with your knife, you can always just clip it. But you don't want to tie too short because that can cause problems for the reeds. So I go around 72.5 and adjust from there if I need to. This is good here. I'm about at 72 millimeters. Alright, so now this is why I like to have my thread handy before. I grab my thread with my right hand, holding this in place with my left hand. And if you can see the top of the staple in between the blades of cane, right? Now when I wrap my thread, I want to wrap it right at the line of the top of the staple. I don't want to wrap it above, don't want to wrap it below, because that will affect the opening of the reed. So I wrap it right at the top of the staple. And here I start to work on what's called the slip. And I'm going to explain that for you. So I'm going to put this back down for a second. When you tie a reed on a staple, you don't want the blades to be flat on top of each other. You want them to be offset a little bit. You can see how it's offset. That's a lot. I'm just showing for the camera. But if I have my two blades here, put them like this. I want the back one, the one that's furthest away from me, to be sticking out to the left just a little bit. So the top one's kind of out to the right. And when I start wrapping, the thread pulls these two together and creates like an airtight seal. So I'll try and get this going on my reed so you can see. Alright, now you probably can't see this on the camera, but my back blade is ever so slightly slipped to the left, out to the left, and I'm pulling tight with my thread now. Once I've got the thread positioned right at the top of the staple and I get the back slip just a little bit, I pull tight and then I just make a wrap or two. Alright? So you always go, I wrap away from my body, if that makes sense. Okay? At this point, what you want to do is check both sides to make sure that the reed seals. So you look at this side, make sure there's no space. Sometimes you see, a glaring hole. You look at it, flip it around, look at the other side, make sure there's no space. And then what I do to make sure it seals is with my left hand, I just kind of pop the mandrel out. Alright, hold the thread in my right hand and I don't know if you could see that, but I put my mouth on top of the reed and suck while holding my finger on the bottom of the staple. And if I can get a good suction on my finger, then I know that the reed seals. Alright, and that just saves you some time because it's such a pain, but it happens all the time where you wrap a reed, get down to the end, and then you realize that it's not sealed. So you just like to check it early. Alright, so at this point it's pretty good, and all I do is start wrapping around. Alright, you want to wrap tightly, but you don't want to crush the cane. Alright, so now I'm pretty close to the bottom of my staple here, you can see. And at this point, all I'm going to do is tie some knots so that my reed doesn't come undone. So to do this, I make a loop. I go around my thumb, around the back of the reed. Alright, and then I just come back up through the loop, right? The bunny goes, what is it, around the tree, I don't know, out of the hole, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. So I do several of these loops. The more the better. It's not the end of the world. If it comes undone, you can just put some glue or some nail polish on there and it'll hold tight. Alright, there we go. And then I just cut the extra thread and that's it. I have what's called a blank and I can start scraping on it.